Wisteria, energy, twister.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Let's continue with our Essex ghost tales. Turpin rides again. George Borrow, writing in the 19th century, called Epping the loveliest forest in the world, and although in size it is now only a tenth of its former glory, it's still green and beautiful. Whether you go there to explore its woodland glades, ancient tracks, or to follow the trail of a notorious desperado who with his gang of fellow ruffians once infested the forest. In the 18th century the forest was no place to linger, admiring the scenery. Outlaws, deer stealers, and highwaymen lay in wait for the unwary, and mention of the Waltham Blacks, as the Epping gang were called. Once this was enough to strike terror into the heart of any traveller obliged to pass through the forest after nightfall. Thanks to the books and films, the highwayman had acquired a romantic image. He is seen as a dashing figure, daring, courageous, the most famous of them all being Dick Turpin, a local Essex lad, born in 1704 at the Bell Inn in Hempstead, east of Saffron Walden, where his father was the landlord. It is a little disappointing to find him described as no more than 5'9" tall, with a scowling, pock-marked face, and there is little doubt that his tough, brutal nature matched his appearance. When he was old enough, he was apprenticed to a Whitechapel butcher, but it is said that the brutality of his manners got him the sack. He then worked for a time for a Plaistow farmer, but stealing cattle and butchering them for sale brought him to the attention of the law, and, after escaping their clutches, he threw in his lot with a gang of smugglers working between Plaistow and Southend. His next career move was to join forces with highwayman Tom King. They became the terror of Epping Forest to such effect that there was soon a price of £200 on Turpin's head. He had found time to marry an East Ham girl, Hester Palmer, and lived with her in a cottage at Sewardstone, south of Waltham Abbey. But it soon became too risky to be seen there, and it was then he made use of a cave at nearby Beach. Well, hidden from the road, making secret trips home for food when the coast was clear. This cave was below the level of the road, disguised by brambles and bracken, and an old print shows Turpin at the cave mouth confronted by a forest keeper, unfortunate enough to discover his hideout, and without hesitation the highwayman simply, shot him dead. Years after Turpin's time, a small alehouse called Turpin's Cave was built beside it, and in the bar they displayed an interesting collection of objects discovered when the floor of the cave was excavated. There were old horseshoes, a cutlass, a flintlock pistol, padlocks, rusty handcuffs, a pickaxe, relics believed to belong to the legendary villain. Surprisingly, after around 250 years, the cave still looks the same. Some years ago the old inn was demolished and a modern house built on the site. Visiting the owner, Mrs. Dawn Moore, who lived there for some time with her family, and knowing the shade of Turpin, is reputed to haunt a number of the old stomping grounds he would walk. I wonder if he does still pay an occasionally ghostly visit. Maybe he does. Dawn said that soon after moving in, she experienced what she described as seeing visions in a mind's eye of a face in the cave. Then one day, a man came to see the cave and asked her, "Where is the carved face of Dick Turpin? It should be in the cave." Sure enough, to her surprise, they were able to discern what is said to be a self-portrait by Turpin himself, cut into part of the arched entrance just inside the cave. Maybe not so noticeable until pointed out, but once it's pointed out, The carving is clearly recognisable as a face with well-marked eyebrows, eyes, broad flat nose and thick lips. It is a coarse, cruel face one would certainly not like to encounter in real life. It reminded me of the reaction of an eyewitness who, after seeing the ghost of Turpin ride through the wall of a house at Aspley Guys in Bedfordshire, one of his well-known refuges, commented that the highwayman looked a much tougher character than he had expected. Dawn said, "Once I had seen this car face in the cave. I never had the visions again." There have certainly been hints that the shade of the famous highwayman may still linger in the area of Essex he knew so well. One night, Dawn's daughter was driving home, and as she was nearing High Beach, she noticed a white, misty shape on the road ahead of her. As she drew nearer, she could see it resembled a figure on horseback, but it was quite transparent, and disappeared as she reached it. Dawn and her husband have also seen a white, shadowy figure by the front garden fence near the entrance of the cave. "We both saw it," she said. "Then as soon as we noticed, it had gone." The family have observed that one room in the house sometimes feels unnaturally cold, and they have all experienced an odd sensation of something just not quite right there. Dawn's younger daughter said that when she and her sister were small, they were very much aware of these feelings, and she sometimes had the impression that there were several unseen people in the room. Turpin ranged far and wide during his notorious career. There are stories in many places suggesting that at certain times the ghost of the famous highwayman returns to ride again in his old haunts. The Essex County Book relates that Turpin on Black Bess is supposed to have leapt the moat to a remote farm at Wimbish called Tipped Tots. One of his most cruel exploits is remembered at Trapp's Hill, Lawton, where his ghost is reputed to return 3 times a year. Turpin had reason to believe that the old lady who lived at Trapp's Hill Farm kept money in the house. One night he broke in and terrorised her, demanding to know where it was hidden. When she resisted, he tortured her by holding her over the kitchen fire until she was forced to give in, and Turpin stole £400 in her jewellery. His ghost is said to ride down Trapp's Hill Hell for leather, and at some point the wrath of an old lady leaps up and clings on behind him, shrieking mournfully. Another version of the story says that after stealing the old woman's money and jewellery, he rode off, dragging her behind him on his horse, and she was battered to death. Turpin had many ways of foiling the law, and he used a stable at Buckhurst Hill, behind a house called Luckton's. There was a closet on the first floor of the house, which opened out of one of the bedrooms, which Turpin used to another stable, and whenever he arrived there just ahead of his pursuers, he would lead his horse upstairs and hide it in the closet, bring another horse downstairs to the outside stable. When his pursuers arrived, they would find what was obviously a fresh, unridden horse in the stable, and Turpin lounging about nearby, an insolent smile on his face. He is believed to have had another safe house in Ilford, which later became the Green Man Inn, and later still a private residence. A lady who lived in the house as a child says that when the family moved in, they found an upstairs room with rings on the walls where horses had been stabled, and the stables outside were haunted. From time to time, they would hear the sound of a horse galloping up to the gates, but when they went outside to open them, there would be nothing there to let in the gates. No horse, no person, nothing. That's a very interesting story because there's a song about the highwayman and his love's called Bess. So I wonder if the song refers to his horse. I bet it does. It's possible, I suppose. Thank you for listening. Please hit the like, share if you can, and do consider subscribing because it does really help. Many blessings.
wisteria, energy, twister.